This podcast is solely for educational purposes and isn't intended as a substitute for the advice of a qualified professional. Hi, and welcome to the NPDCAST, where I, a narcissist, talk about the ins and outs of NPD, also known as Narcissistic Personality Disorder. Throughout this series, I will discuss the reality of NPD as well as the recovery process, the ups and downs, and the complexities. You can call me Nin. I highly suggest you check out my first episode, or at the very least the beginning, to hear my disclaimers. I'm not here to tell you what to think or believe, only to keep an open mind and heart as I discuss my experience and what's worked for me. Today's topic is chronic boredom. Chronic boredom is when you experience a state of feelings of restlessness and weariness due to either a lack of interest or stimulation that can last between weeks to months, and in some cases maybe even years. Chronic boredom can be experienced by anyone with any mental health condition, but due to its connections with anhedonia, which is the inability to experience joy or pleasure, as well as general serotonin and dopamine levels, which can often cause impulsivity, it's commonly experienced by people with personality disorders. Chronic boredom isn't something that's resolvable by doing something entertaining. It's a constant feeling of boredom, of emptiness, where things are never enough. One can spend the day preoccupied with their favourite things but still be on edge and searching for something more appealing, essentially seeking a rush of adrenaline or dopamine. And this can become a harmful cycle wherein sufferers indulge in dangerous, harmful activities in order to overcome the boredom that they're experiencing. This can be through drugs, alcohol, reckless driving, sex, among other things. The desire to feel something other than the emptiness overrides all logic and sense. This interconnects with how people with NPD treat others. It's commonly misinterpreted that we don't care about other people, that we seek what we want and nothing else matters. Oftentimes this is untrue when it's put in such a basic way. What's really happening is that nothing is ever good enough. On the surface, that sounds cruel and demanding. Can you imagine how it must feel to never be satisfied by anything? Even when you try and you understand how important it is to others that you're grateful, that you're satisfied with their efforts and hard work, you're just not. Caught between a complex fight with yourself wherein nothing is enough and everything is too good for you. You deserve more and nothing at the same time. NPD works in extremely complex ways, and a specific example of this could be how we crave attention and praise, but then when we get it, we don't know what to do with it. It can be a very uncomfortable experience getting what we desire. We're so used to having it taken from us or being told we're undeserving of it. It can be hard to compute, which is why a friend suddenly doing what we want them to do can be difficult to cope with. It's easier to turn to mistrust or denial. Equally, when we want to do something that might affect others, we tune that out because the belief that our needs are more important overrides everything else. It's important we get what we want, take what we need, acquire what will improve our chances of survival, even if survival has nothing to do with the situation. And you're probably thinking, how does behaving impulsively and doing dangerous things improve our chances of survival? That's where it becomes confusing, admittedly. Logically, that makes no sense, but in the heat of the moment, when the boredom is at its max and we feel like we might not pull through it, it makes the most sense to get rid of it at any cost. Nobody said personality disorders were easy to understand. Then there's the factor of suicidality. Even if it's passive, which means present but not invasive or oppressive, sometimes it feels easier to risk our lives than deal with that constant, gnawing boredom. We might seek out violence and aggression in favour of feeling a rush over it, or we might indulge in a relationship where we know it's no good for us, just to feel something. Chronic boredom isn't talked about nearly enough for how impactful, damaging, and damning it can be. Actions that could be considered abusive or callous can include us dropping our partners when they are no longer fulfilling for us. On the surface, this can appear as heartless. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that we care who we hurt every time. Sometimes we don't, because our survival comes first. If we feel we need someone more invigorating or distracting in our lives, we will seek that out. Of course, the best way to prevent this from happening is self-growth, teaching yourself to become aware of your negative behaviours. The aforementioned is just an example, there's plenty more out there. Communication is an extremely useful tool when both involved carry it out correctly, and if it can't be achieved together, then a professional, unbiased mediator can help. Therapy is often doubted because it's complex. There are so many nuances to therapy, like finding the right therapist, navigating the financial side of it, opening up, and being vulnerable. The cold hard truth of it, because I don't believe self-help should ever be sugar-coated, is that if you want things to improve, you have to try. And trust me, nobody understands that better than I do. I've been in therapy for years, and it's taken me that long to even mildly reach a place of vulnerability. It takes a lot of work. Nobody is saying it's going to be easy, and to begin with, you might even hate it. But I promise, when you find the right person, it can really help, as long as you're honest about what you want to achieve. If a therapist is doing a good job, they're not going to sit and validate every word that comes out of your mouth. They're not paid to agree with you. They're there to offer a different perspective depending on the type of therapy you choose, to help you better understand how your actions might have impacted others, as well as how others' actions might have impacted you, how things could have been handled differently between you all instead of placing the blame directly onto you. Chronic boredom is a two-way street. You feel empty and seek more, and then when you get it, it's not enough. So how do you cope with that? You could occupy yourself with an abundance of things to entertain yourself with, for sure. But it's all about the lack of interest. Things you once enjoyed may no longer be enjoyable. For me personally, finding one thing that I really enjoy has helped. I enjoy writing as well as gardening. I set myself the goal of finally getting to write a book I've been sitting on the idea of for some time. It got me thinking about books I could write in the future, including self-help books. I decided to go ahead with this podcast, which was something else to do, and I also took up cooking meals from scratch a lot of the time, which means I'm busy in the evening a lot. I know I enjoy baking from time to time, or you can invest in an easygoing pet to look after. And I say invest because you should never seek the company of an animal when you can't fully dedicate to their needs or possible financially demanding health problems. Look into volunteer work or offer your efforts up for work experience. If you have people in your life, ask for their thoughts on ideas. It's helpful when others around you can hype you up and help you feel passionate about things. It's important to remember that although chronic boredom can feel all-consuming, it's only as powerful as you allow it to be. It can be exhausting to feel like you're locked in a fight to survive rather than just enjoying life. But the more you expand into the lives of others rather than solely occupying and prioritizing yourself, the more you'll find how valued you are. If you're bored, phone up a friend or family member and ask if they'd like to go somewhere. Do something nice for them. You might find you benefit from making others feel better. That way, you're not under your own spotlight, feeling your own pressure. As usual, if you have any questions you'd like to be answered during the next or most relevant episode, feel free to leave them in the comments. Next time, I will be diving into the topic of stigma. This will include a discussion on the stigma and misconceptions surrounding NPD. Thanks so much for tuning in to the NPDCAST today, and hopefully you learned something valuable about yourself or someone in your life through listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it, please consider leaving a comment or a star. It really helps me see which direction I'm heading in. Until next time, I've been Nin. Bye.